She was a witch in hiding. He was a prince cursed to feel nothing. When she risked execution by using her forbidden magic to save him, her desperate touch didn't just shatter his curse, it unleashed a decade of stolen emotion and bound their souls, turning the king's perfect puppet into her fated protector and his father's deadliest enemy. Prologue. My magic exploded out of me in a wave of raw, screaming light. I hadn't meant to. I had spent 10 years hiding, 10 years with my power choked down so deep I almost believed it was gone. I was Aelindra the scullery maid, Aelindra the quiet girl, Aelindra the nothing. But the assassin's dagger was fast, and Prince Corvin's back was turned. He didn't see the man lunge from the crowd. He didn't see the flicker of steel aimed at his heart. He was the dead prince, the cursed prince. He felt nothing. He saw nothing. He was a beautiful, empty puppet. And I couldn't let him die. I didn't think. I acted. My hand flew out. The word no tore from my throat. My magic, wild and terrified, smashed into the assassin. He was thrown backward, hitting a stone pillar with a sickening crack, the dagger clattering uselessly on the marble. The great hall went silent. It was the silence of 100 hearts stopping at once. The music died. The laughter died. There was only the sound of my own breath, ragged and sharp in my chest. I had just used magic. In the middle of the king's court. In front of everyone. The law in MYRR was not complicated. It was not open to interpretation. It was one word: death. Guards were already moving, their armor clanking. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at him. Prince Corvin had turned. His face, always so perfectly blank, was a mask of cold porcelain. He was the most beautiful man I had ever seen, and the most terrifying. His eyes, the color of a frozen sea, found mine. There was no recognition in them. No anger. No gratitude. There was nothing. This was the curse. He was empty. "Seize the witch," his father, King Theron, roared from the throne. Hands grabbed my arms. Rough, unyielding. Captain Julian, his face a grim line, was the one to pull my hands behind my back. "No, please," I whispered, the tears already starting. I was saving him. "You saw. You used magic," Julian said, his voice slow. It was not an accusation. It was a death sentence. They started to drag me away. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. I was going to die. I was going to be executed, and the last thing I would ever see was this empty, unfeeling face. Something inside me broke. With a strength I didn't know I had, I ripped my arm free from the guard's grasp. I didn't run. I lunged toward the prince. The crowd gasped. The guard shouted. Corvin didn't even flinch. I didn't know what I was doing. Pleading? Begging? I just knew I couldn't die while he looked at me like I was part of the furniture. My hand, slick with nervous sweat, grabbed his. I gripped his wrist, my fingers digging into the fine fabric of his glove. "Please," I sobbed. "Please, feel something." And then it happened. It was not a sound. It was a feeling. A jolt, so powerful it was like lightning had struck the spot where our skin met. My magic, which had been reaching for anything, poured into him. Prince Corvin's eyes, the empty, frozen eyes, snapped wide. He made a sound. A choked, strangled gasp. His head jerked back. His free hand flew to his chest, gripping the front of his tunic. He stared at me, and for the first time, the nothing was gone. His eyes were filled with a decade of stolen emotion. 10 years of terror, of pain, of confusion, of grief, all hitting him in a single, devastating second. He looked terrified. He looked alive. The guards froze. The king was half out of his throne. And the prince, the cursed, dead prince, did not let go of my hand. He held on, his grip like a steel trap, as if I were the only thing keeping him from drowning. His eyes were locked on mine, and in their depths a new, terrifying light was burning. He was back. and I had just marked myself as his. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me for this new story. Where are you watching from, and what's the weather like there today? Let me know in the comments below. This is just the beginning of Aelindra and Corvin's journey. If you want to find out what happens next, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter. Chapter 1. It all started 3 months ago, on the day I first truly saw the prince. Before I was a witch facing execution, I was just Aelindra, a girl trying to survive. I had fled my village after the fire. I had no family, no coven, and no protection. The capital city of Myrr was the perfect place to hide. In a city of thousands, one more shadow is easy to miss. Myrr was a city of golden light and dark laws. Built on the cliffs of a wide, churning river, its towers and spires were kissed by a warm, honey-colored sun almost every evening. It was beautiful, but it was a beauty that hid a rot. King Theron's purge of the afflicted, as he called it, had been brutal and thorough. Anyone with a drop of magic, healers, seers, hedge witches, had been rounded up and burned. The city was clean. It was safe. It was a lie. I found work in the royal castle, right under the king's nose. It was the last place they would ever look. I was a scullery maid, one of a dozen girls who scrubbed pots, mopped floors, and kept our heads down. My magic was a dull, sleeping thing. I wore a small, cold iron charm on a chain under my tunic. It was supposed to dampen magic, to keep it quiet. But lately, it felt like it was failing. My magic was a restless animal, pacing the cage of my body woken by. I didn't know what. I first saw Prince Corvin in the training yard. I was carrying a heavy basket of laundry, my arms burning, when he walked by. The other maids scattered, curtsying low and not meeting his eyes. I dropped into a curtsy, my gaze on the gravel. He gives me a chill, one of the other maids, a girl named Aelindra, whispered to me later, when we were safely back in the kitchens. It's like looking at a ghost. A beautiful, mean ghost. But I had peeked. He wasn't mean. He was just empty. He was tall, with the kind of broad shoulders that the heavy, dark tunics of the royal guard only seemed to emphasize. His hair was black, a stark contrast to his pale skin. He was, as Aelindra said, beautiful. But his beauty was that of a statue. Perfect and cold and dead. He was in the yard with Captain Julian, a man whose stern face couldn't hide the deep sadness in his eyes. Julian was trying to get the prince to spar. "Your Highness, you must keep your forms," Julian urged, his voice kind. Prince Corvin just stared at him. Then, with a fluid, mechanical grace, he picked up a wooden sword. He didn't want to. He did not want to. He just did. They fought. Or rather, Corvin moved through the motions. He was perfect. Every block, every parry, every thrust was flawless. He was faster than Julian, stronger, more precise. But there was no passion. No fire. No life. He was a machine built for fighting. I felt a strange, aching pity for him. The rumors said a witch had cursed him as a child, stripping him of all emotion, all feeling. They said she did it out of spite when the king refused her. But as I watched King Theron that same day, I wondered. The king held court in the afternoon, the golden hour light streaming through the high windows, making the dust motes dance. He was a large man, with a thick beard and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. His voice was a booming, confident thing that demanded obedience. Prince Corvin stood at his side, just a step behind the throne. Silent. Still. "My son agrees," the king announced, deciding a harsh new tax on the farmers. "He believes, as I do, that loyalty must be proven with coin." Corvin hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't blinked. I saw it then. The curse wasn't a punishment for the king. It was a tool. The king didn't have an heir. He had a puppet. An obedient, ruthless, perfectly predictable son who would never question him, never defy him, Never feel the pity or doubt that made rulers weak. King Theron used the curse. He liked it. That realization made my magic stir under my skin, hot and angry. The iron charm felt like it was burning. I clutched it through my tunic, forcing the feeling down. Be a shadow. Be nothing. Survive. For 3 months, I survived. I scrubbed, I hid, I watched. I watched the dead prince walk the halls, a beautiful corpse. I watched the king rule with an iron fist. I watched Captain Julian look at his prince with the grief of a man who had lost a son. My magic grew more restless. It was harder to control. I started dropping things, my hand tingling at the wrong moment. A plate would slip and hang in the air for half a second before clattering to the floor. I would be clumsy, and Aelindra would laugh, telling me I was the clumsiest girl in MYRR. I was terrified. The iron charm wasn't working anymore. Then came the day of the summer festival. The great hall was full. Nobles from all over the kingdom were there, dressed in bright silks. The mood was light. Wine was flowing. Even the king seemed to be in a good mood. I was helping serve, moving through the crowd with a tray of wine, keeping my head down. That's when I saw the little boy. He was a visiting noble's son, no older than 5, with bright red hair. He had slipped away from his parents and was chasing a butterfly. I smiled, just for a second. Then my smile froze. The butterfly had fluttered up toward the high-railed balcony that overlooked the hall. The boy, giggling, was climbing the stone steps. He was too fast. I set my tray down, but I was too far away. The boy reached the top. He pulled himself up onto the railing, balancing on the wide stone, reaching for the butterfly. "Get him," someone shouted. The boy's mother screamed. He wobbled. He overreached. And he fell. Time slowed down. I saw the air catch him. I saw his small body tumbling end over end. I saw the hard marble floor rushing up to meet him. I didn't think. I couldn't. The thought of that small body breaking. I screamed no. My magic, the power I had denied for a decade, the power that was a death sentence, ripped out of me. It wasn't a wave of light this time. It was a cushion. A soft, invisible hand of wind that caught the boy, slowing his descent, stopping him just a foot above the stone. He hung there, suspended in midair, giggling like it was a game. And, just like in the training yard, the great hall went silent. I was on my knees, my hand outstretched. I was breathing hard. I had just saved a life. And I had just ended my own. I looked up. My eyes, wide with terror, scanned the crowd. Past the shocked faces of the nobles. Past the frozen musicians. Past the horrified, screaming mother. My gaze landed and locked on him. Prince Corvin was standing near the dais. He hadn't been watching the boy. He had been watching me. His head was tilted, just slightly, and his cold, sea-blue eyes were staring right at me. He saw it all. He didn't react. He just watched. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw another movement. A flash of dark cloth. A man, who had been hidden in the crowd, was taking advantage of the chaos. He lunged, not at the child, but at the prince. A dagger was in his hand. And my story, my real story, began. Chapter 2. We were back in the throne room, but the music and laughter were gone. The air was thick with the smell of my magic, like ozone and sharp, cold air. Prince Corvin was still holding my hand. His grip was crushing. But he wasn't looking at me. His eyes were closed, his head bowed. His entire body was shaking, not with a chill, but with violent, uncontrolled tremors. He was breathing, but it was all wrong, sharp, gasping breaths, as if he'd been held underwater for 10 years and had just broken the surface. King Theron was on his feet, his face purple with a rage that went beyond my use of magic. This was not the contained anger of a king. This was the raw panic of a man who had just lost his greatest weapon. "Corvin," he boomed. "Let go of the witch." Corvin didn't respond. He couldn't. He was locked in his own body, a prisoner to the flood of sensations. I could almost feel it myself, a faint echo through our joined hands, the shock, the burning pain in his chest, the ice in his veins, the sudden, sharp, terrifying clarity. I said, "Let go," the king screamed. He took a step toward us, his hand on the hilt of his sword. Corvin's head snapped up. His eyes flew open. They were still that frozen sea blue, but they were no longer empty. They were wild. They were a storm. "No," he whispered. It was the first word I had ever heard him speak of his own free will. The word was rough, torn from his throat, and it echoed in the stunned silence of the hall. It was a simple word, but it was an act of pure rebellion. The king stopped. The entire court held its breath. "What," the king said, his voice dropping to a deadly low growl, "did you say to me?" I said, "No." Corvin's voice was stronger this time. He took a step, pulling me slightly behind him. It wasn't a choice. It was an instinct. He was shielding me. His eyes were locked on his father. And in them I saw 10 years of suppressed hate. You dare. What did you do to me?" Corvin interrupted. His voice was no longer a whisper. It was a snarl. "What did you let happen to me?" "It was a curse, you fool," the king shouted, his composure cracking. "A witch's curse." "It was a cage," Corvin shot back. "And you held the key." King Theron was losing control. The court was watching. His perfect, obedient puppet was not only speaking, it was accusing him. He had to end this. "She has bewitched him," the king roared, pointing at me. "She is a dark magic user. She attacked the prince. Seize her. She will be burned." The guards, who had been frozen, finally moved. Captain Julian and 2 others surged forward. But Corvin moved faster. He yanked me fully behind him, his body a solid wall, and drew his own sword. The sound of steel ringing in the throne room was shocking. "Touch her," Corvin seethed, leveling the point of his blade at Julian's throat, "and you die." Julian froze, his eyes wide, looking from his prince, the real prince, to his king. "My prince," Julian pleaded, "she is a witch." "She," Corvin said, his voice dropping, "is the only thing in this room that makes sense." As he spoke, the magic still humming between us, the magic that had kick-started his heart, did something new. It flared. A burning heat erupted on my wrist. I cried out, pulling my hand from his, but it was too late. I stared at my skin. A mark was appearing on my inner wrist, a glowing, intricate symbol like a stylized, unfolding flower. It was bright, pulsing with a soft, golden light. I looked at Corvin. He had dropped his sword. He was staring at his own gloved hand. He ripped the leather off, baring his wrist. There, on his skin, was the exact same mark. A collective gasp went through the room. An old duchess in the front row put her hand to her heart. "The Acra," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's the fated bond." The king's face went white. The Acra. I had read about it in the old texts, the ones my grandmother kept hidden. It wasn't just a legend. It was the oldest magic. A bond of fate, of soul. It was unbreakable. It was sacred. And it was stronger than the king's law. King Theron knew it. The entire court knew it. You cannot execute a prince's fated mate. It would be an act against the gods. The kingdom would not stand for it. I saw the calculation in the king's eyes. He had lost. But only for a moment. His mind was sharp, venomous. He couldn't kill me. So he would pivot. "You see," the king shouted, his voice suddenly full of false, booming sorrow. "The witch has done more than attack him. She has cursed him. She has bound him with a false mark, a dark sorcery, to control him. To turn him against his own blood." He pointed at me again, his eyes full of righteous fire. "She is a weapon. Sent by our enemies. She must be studied. We must find a way to break this dark bond and save the prince." It was brilliant. And it was terrifying. He wasn't sentencing me to death. He was sentencing me to something worse. "Captain Julian," the king commanded, "take the witch to the high tower. She is not to be harmed." But she is not to be seen. Double the guard. Use the magic dampening stones. Find out who sent her. Yes, Your Majesty. Julian's voice was flat. He would not meet my eyes. No, Corvin roared. He took a step toward me, but he was swaying. The rush of emotion, the fight, the akara, it was too much. His face was pale, covered in a cold sweat. He was overloading. Corvin, I said, my voice shaking. It's okay. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a new raw terror. He was afraid. Afraid of his father. Afraid of what was happening. Afraid of me. And most of all, afraid of being alone again in the dark. Don't leave me, he whispered. It was the plea of a child. My prince, you are unwell, Julian said, gently taking his arm. The witch's magic, it's hurting you. Corvin couldn't fight him. He was too weak. The other guards grabbed me. This time, I didn't fight. I let them drag me from the hall. The last thing I saw before the heavy doors slammed shut was Prince Corvin, on his knees, staring at the spot where I had stood, his hand clutched to his chest. He wasn't empty anymore. He was broken. They threw me into the high tower. The cell was round, with stone walls that felt damp and cold, even in the warm daylight. There was one small, barred window. The stones of the cell hummed. They were ancient, carved with runes that drank magic. The moment the door slammed, I felt my power drain away, leaving me weak and human. I was alone. I was a prisoner. I had saved the prince, only to have the king declare me his greatest enemy. I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. I had failed. I was going to die here. But as I sat in the crushing, magicless silence, I thought of the look in Corvin's eyes. The raw, desperate need. He wasn't the dead prince anymore. He was a man who had just woken up in a nightmare. And I was the only one who knew how to wake him. Chapter 3. 3 days. For 3 days, I saw no one. I heard nothing but the wind whistling through the high battlements and the distant cry of gulls from the river. They slid food and water through a slot in the heavy wooden door, but the guards never spoke. The magic dampening stones in the walls were a constant, humming sickness. They didn't just block my power, they fed on it, pulling it out of me, leaving me exhausted, shaky, and cold. My body felt heavy, my mind sluggish. This was the king's study. He was letting me rot. I spent the time huddled in the thin blanket, staring at the akara mark on my wrist. The golden light had faded, but the intricate lines remained, dark against my skin, like a tattoo. A permanent reminder of my failure. I thought about Corvin. Was he okay? Had the shock been too much? Had his father locked him away too? Or had the king found a way to fix him, to shove him back into that empty, emotionless void? The thought made my stomach twist with a sickness that had nothing to do with the stones. On the third night, the sound of a heavy bar being lifted from the outside of my door made me jolt. The door creaked open. It wasn't a guard. Prince Corvin stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the torchlight of the hall. He was alone. He looked terrible. His black hair was a mess, his fine tunic was rumpled, and there were dark, bruised-looking shadows under his eyes. He wasn't the perfect, cold statue or the raging man from the throne room. He just looked lost and exhausted. He stepped inside, pushing the door shut behind him. The sound of the bar dropping back into place echoed in the small room. We were locked in. Together. He just stood there for a long moment, staring at me. His hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists at his sides. He was shaking again. "What," he finally said, his voice a low, rough rasp, "did you do to me?" I pulled my blanket tighter. I didn't do anything. Not on purpose. The magic, it just reacted. To the assassin. To you. He took a step closer, and I flinched. He stopped, a look of something flashing across his face. Was it guilt? "It hurts," he whispered. He pressed the heel of his palm to his temple. "It doesn't stop. The feeling. It's too loud. It's too much." "What do you feel?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Everything. He said the word like it was a curse. Grief. I feel my mother's death. It happened 12 years ago. I watched her. I felt nothing. Now I can't stop. I can't. His voice broke. He wouldn't cry, he didn't know how, but the agony was plain on his face. Rage. I want to tear my father apart. And fear. I'm so afraid. He looked at me, his eyes desperate. I wanted to go back. I want the nothing. The quiet. I can't do that, I whispered, my heart breaking for him. I don't know how. No, he said, taking another step. No, you don't understand. He was closer now, only a few feet away. When you're not here, it's chaos. It's just noise. I can't think. I can't breathe. But he was right in front of me now, close enough that I could feel the heat rolling off his skin. He was a furnace of newfound emotion. But when I'm near you, he whispered, his gaze dropping to my mouth. It clarifies. It's still loud, but it makes sense. The pain it's focused. He reached out, his hand hesitating in the air between us. He was terrified to touch me and terrified not to. May I? He asked. I was so stunned by the courtesy, by the vulnerability, that I could only nod. His fingers, shaking, brushed my cheek. The moment his skin touched mine, the Akara bond flared. It wasn't the violent jolt from the throne room. This was a deep, warm hum, like a cello note. The sickness from the magic-dampening stones vanished. My head cleared. My strength returned. I could feel my magic, which had been sluggish and weak, rush to the surface, warm and bright. Corvin let out a shaky breath, his eyes closing. It's quiet, he whispered. The noise, it's gone. There's just you. He knelt in front of me, his hand still on my cheek. He looked at me, really looked at me, his eyes searching mine. Who are you? My name is Aelindra, I said. I'm a witch. I was in hiding. Aelindra, he repeated, tasting the name. Why save me? I couldn't just watch you die, I said. Even if you were. Empty, he finished. He gave a short, bitter laugh. A puppet. His gaze hardened. My father is furious. He's lost his puppet. He sat back on his heels, though he didn't take his hand from my face. He came to me. He told me you are a weapon. That you were sent by his enemies in the north. He wants me to interrogate you. My blood went cold. Interrogate me? He thinks the bond, the Akara, will make you trust me. He wants me to find out who your master is. He wants a name. He wants a reason to start a war. I don't have a master, I said, panic rising. I'm alone. I've been alone since the purge. I know. His voice was soft. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I believe you. We stayed like that in the silence, just breathing. His touch was the only thing keeping the crushing cold of the stones at bay. He used me, Corvin said, his voice thick. For 10 years. He let me walk around as a thing. He preferred me that way. He preferred me dead. I know, I whispered. I saw it. I pitied you. His eyes flashed. I don't want your pity. Then what do you want? His gaze was intense, burning with a new, raw hunger that was part of the flood. He was feeling desire for the first time. He was feeling need. And it was all aimed at me. I want. He began, but he didn't know the words. He was a man-sized infant, learning a new language. I want more. He leaned in, his lips parting. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break my ribs. He was going to kiss me. The sound of a heavy footstep in the hall outside made him freeze. He pulled back, his hand dropping from my face. The cold, sick feeling of the stones washed over me again, twice as strong. I almost cried out at the loss. Corvin shot to his feet, his face hardening back into a mask. It wasn't the empty mask of the curse. It was the sharp, angry mask of a cornered animal. He's giving me 2 more days to get you to talk, Corvin said, his voice low and urgent, moving toward the door. Then he's sending his own interrogator. A man they call the chirurgeon. My blood turned to ice. I knew that name. A torturer. A monster. Corvin looked back at me, his eyes blazing in the dark. I will not let him touch you, he said. His voice was no longer lost or confused. It was a vow. It was the promise of a prince. We are leaving, he said. Tonight. Chapter 4. He came back just after the midnight bell. I was waiting, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I had been pacing the small cell for hours, the king's threat and Corvin's promise warring in my mind. The bar on the door lifted, quieter this time. Corvin slipped inside, a bundle of dark cloth in his arms. He was dressed in black leather, no royal colors, with a hood pulled low. Here, he hissed, tossing the bundle at me. Put these on. Quickly. We don't have much time. It was a servant's tunic and rough spun trousers. I didn't hesitate. I turned my back to him, my fingers fumbling with the ties on my rough prisoner's shift, my entire body shaking. The magic dampening stones were making me clumsy. How did you get past the guards? I whispered, pulling the warm tunic over my head. They're loyal to the crown, he said, his voice tight. But they're used to me being a ghost. They don't see me. He paused. And the ones at your door. I gave them a new post. At the bottom of the river. My head snapped around. His face was in shadow, but I could see the hard line of his jaw. You killed them? I am feeling 10 years of rage, he said, his voice flat and cold. They were in my way. Do not make me think about it. He had saved me, but he was a stranger. A man who had just rediscovered violence, not as an order, but as a release. I finished dressing, my fear of the king now mixed with a new, sharp fear of my rescuer. Good, he said, not looking at me. Stay close. And do not speak. He opened the door a crack, peering into the torchlit hall. It was empty. He grabbed my hand. The instant his skin touched mine, the Akara bond roared to life. The humming sickness from the stones vanished. Strength flooded my limbs. My magic, which had been a distant flicker, slammed back into me, hot and bright. Corvin let out a sharp, relieved breath. I could feel his own jagged nerves smooth out, his focus sharpening. We were stronger together. The bond fed on our proximity. This way, he whispered, and pulled me into the hall. We ran. We kept to the shadows, Corvin leading the way with a confidence that came from a lifetime of walking these halls. He was right. The few guards we saw seemed to look right through him, their eyes sliding off him as if he were still the dead prince. I was just a shadow trailing in his wake. We descended flight after flight of stairs, deep into the castle's belly, past the kitchens, past the wine cellars, into the damp, cold dungeons. Where are we going? I panted, my legs burning. The old ways, he said. The tunnels my great-grandfather built. The ones my father uses to move people he doesn't want seen. We reached a dead end, a solid stone wall slick with grime. Corvin pressed a specific brick. With a low groan of stone on stone, a section of the wall receded, revealing a black, gaping hole. In, he commanded. He was halfway through the opening when a voice sparked from the darkness behind us. My prince. We froze. Captain Julian stood at the end of the corridor, a lit torch in his hand, his sword drawn. His face was a mask of disbelief and betrayal. Prince Corvin, step away from the witch. Corvin slowly backed out of the tunnel, pushing me behind him again. Julian, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Go back to bed. You didn't see us. I cannot do that, Highness, Julian said, taking a step closer. His eyes were on me, full of hate. She has poisoned your mind. She has cursed you. She has freed me, Corvin snarled. That is what she wants you to believe. Julian was pleading now. The king was right. She's a weapon. She's controlling you. Let me kill her. It's the only way to break the bond. To save you. He raised his sword, his eyes set. He truly believed he was saving his prince. "No," I shouted, stepping out from behind Corvin. "Julian," Corvin said, his voice dropping. He didn't raise his sword. He just spoke. And his voice was filled with all the pain of the last 3 days. "For 10 years, you brought me my meals. You dressed me. You led me to my father's court. You watched me. And you never once tried to help me." Julian flinched as if struck. I am loyal to the king." "You were loyal to a tyrant who was mutilating his son," Corvin said, his voice raw. "I was a corpse, Julian. I was a thing. And he liked it. He kept me that way. He said it was for the good of the kingdom." Julian whispered, his sword arm trembling. "And now I am awake," Corvin said. "Thanks to her. The Acra bond, it's not a curse. It's a cure. He lied to you. He lied to all of us." Julian looked at Corvin, really looked at him. He saw the pain, the rage, the life in his prince's eyes. He saw the glowing mark on Corvin's wrist and the matching one on mine. He saw the truth. His sword lowered. "My prince, what have I done?" The sound of an alarm bell, high and distant, shattered the moment. "Someone's found the guards," Julian said, his head snapping up. "He's locked down the castle." "The tunnel," Corvin said, grabbing my hand. "It's too late," Julian said. "They'll be at the exit before you're halfway there. It leads to the main road. It's the only way." "No," Julian said, grabbing a torch from the wall. "There's another. But it's old. It hasn't been used since the purge." He looked at me. "It leads to the old witch warrens under the river. Go. I will buy you time." He grabbed Corvin by the shoulders, his eyes full of a sudden, desperate loyalty. "Keep him safe," he commanded me. As I should have. Before Corvin could argue, Julian turned and ran back down the hall, his sword raised, shouting this way. "They've gone to the west wing. Lock it down." "Come on," I said, pulling Corvin into the tunnel Julian had pointed to. It was dark. It was cramped. It smelled of wet earth and decay. We ran, his hand holding mine in a death grip. We could feel each other's panic, the desperate, pounding need to be free. The tunnel was low, and I stumbled. Corvin didn't hesitate. He wrapped one arm around my waist, lifting me half off my feet, and kept moving. His strength was inhuman. The physical contact was electric. The Acra bond hummed between us, a beacon in the suffocating darkness. We ran for what felt like hours. My lungs were on fire. Just when I thought I couldn't take another step, I saw it, a faint, pale light ahead. We burst out of the tunnel, collapsing onto a muddy riverbank. The air was cool and sweet. We were outside. We were free. We were on the far side of the river, hidden by a tangle of willow trees. Across the churning black water, the castle of Myr was lit up like a hornet's nest. The alarm bells were ringing, a frantic, angry sound. The sun was just beginning to rise. The sky was turning a soft, bruised purple, and the first rays of morning light, a beautiful, warm, golden light, hit the top of the highest tower. My tower. My prison. Corvin was on his knees, breathing hard, his head bowed. He was free. He was hunted. "He will not stop," he panted, staring at the castle across the water. "He will tear the entire kingdom apart to find us." To find me. I knelt beside him on the muddy bank. I was terrified. But looking at him, seeing the new, raw determination on his face, I felt something else, too. "Then we have to find a way to stop him," I said. He turned his head, his eyes meeting mine in the new, warm daylight. He wasn't the dead prince. He wasn't the king's puppet. He was just Corvin. And he was my fated one. Chapter 5. We ran for 3 days. We followed the river south, keeping to the thick, wild forests that choked its banks. We moved by night and slept by day, hiding in hollow logs and damp caves. Corvin knew the land in a way I didn't. His cursed mind had been a perfect sponge, absorbing maps and terrain, even if he'd felt no joy in it. The farther we got from the castle and its dampening stones, the stronger my magic became. It was no longer restless, it was singing. It hummed under my skin, eager. I could feel the life in the trees, the energy of the water. I used it to mask our trail, whispering to the leaves to cover our tracks, to the wind to carry our scent away. Corvin was struggling. Freedom was not kind. His mind, which had been silent for a decade, was now a roaring battlefield of emotions he didn't understand. He had nightmares. He would wake up in our cold, hidden camps, his body rigid, a silent scream on his lips. He was reliving every moment of his dead life, but this time with feeling. The grief for his mother, the cold-blooded orders he'd given, the boring executions he'd overseen. He was drowning in his own past. On the third night, the first real rain of the season broke. It was a cold, driving downpour that turned the forest floor into a swamp. We were soaked, freezing, and miserable. "We have to find shelter," Corvin said, his voice hoarse. He was shaking, but not just from the cold. He was feverish, his body at war with his mind. "This way," I said, pulling him. I could feel something, a pull in the magic. A place of quiet. I led him through a thicket of thorns, up a slippery rock face, and behind a curtain of icy water. A waterfall. Hidden behind it was a cave. It wasn't the damp, small hole we'd been sleeping in. This was a sanctuary. The air inside was dry and strangely warm. The walls glowed faintly with a soft, golden light, not from my magic, but from glowing moss. In the center, a natural spring bubbled up, clear and clean. It was a place of old magic. A place of witches. How did you know?" Corvin whispered, sinking to the dry floor, his back against the wall. "My magic, it remembered," I said, my voice full of wonder. I set to work. I gathered dry wood from the back of the cave and, with a snap of my fingers, lit a fire. The flames crackled to life, casting warm, dancing shadows on the walls. I filled our water skins from the spring. Corvin didn't move. He just watched me, his face pale and slick with rain in the firelight. "You need to rest," I said, sitting across from him, offering him a piece of the hardtack we'd stolen from the castle kitchens. He ignored it. "It won't stop," he whispered, his eyes wide and haunted. The memories. I see them. The people my father, the people I gave the orders. I stood there. I felt nothing. He looked at his hands. "How can I live with this?" "You weren't in control," I said gently, moving to sit beside him. "You were a victim, just like they were." "Was I?" he said, his voice breaking. "Or was I just a monster waiting for a leash?" "You are not a monster." He turned to me, his eyes blazing. "You don't know that. You don't know me. You've known me for a week. I am rage. I am grief. I am nothing but what he made me." "You're wrong," I said, my voice fierce. "You were nothing. And now you are everything. You're feeling it all at once. You have to learn. You have to let it settle." I reached out, my hand hovering, just as he had done in my cell. "May I?" He nodded, his breath catching. I placed my hand on his chest, right over his heart. The Akrabon sang. I could feel the chaos in him, the storm. I didn't try to stop it. I just let my magic be an anchor. A quiet place in the storm. He let out a long, shuddering sigh, his whole body slumping in relief. The wildness in his eyes softened. He leaned his head back against the stone, his eyes closing. "It's better," he murmured. "When you touch me, it's quiet." We sat in silence for a long time, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the roar of the waterfall outside. The cave was filled with a warm, golden light. "He hated me," Corvin said suddenly, his voice soft. "Who?" "My father. I always thought, even in the gray. I thought he was hard on me because he was training me. Because he was a king. But it wasn't that." He opened his eyes, and they were clear, filled with a terrible, new understanding. He was afraid of me. Before the curse, I was like my mother. I felt too much. I would cry when he executed traitors. I argued with him. I defied him. The curse, it didn't just break me. It fixed me for him. He was relieved. He turned his head, his face now only inches from mine. He didn't just use the curse, Aelindra. He wanted it. I know, I whispered. And we're going to make him answer for it. The tension in the air shifted. It was no longer just comfort. It was something else. The bond between us was humming a low, demanding thrum. He was staring at my lips. I was staring at his. Aelindra, he breathed, his voice thick. This feeling. When I look at you, it's not the rage. It's not the grief. It's like the fire. It's warm. And it burns. My heart was pounding. I feel it too. Is it real? He asked, his eyes searching mine, full of a raw, desperate vulnerability. Or is it just the magic? Is it just the Akara? I don't know, I whispered honestly. I don't know what's the bond and what's us. He lifted his hand, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. His touch was hesitant, but electric. Let's find out, he said. He leaned in. And he kissed me. The world exploded. It wasn't a soft, gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was 10 years of nothing crashing into a lifetime of everything. It was his new, raw, desperate soul reaching for mine. It was fire and ice and magic and hope. The promise of the title was fulfilled. He kissed me. And my magic, my wild, untamed magic, which had been anchored by his pain, responded. It erupted from me, not in a scream, but in a song. It wrapped around us a cocoon of pure, golden light. His own magic, the dormant, royal magic of his bloodline, rose to meet it. The cave brightened, the moss on the walls flaring like stars. And in the light, we both saw it. A vision. It was not a memory. It was an echo. A woman, with hair like fire and eyes like the forest, was standing before a younger, dark-haired King Theron. You ask me to curse your son, the witch in the vision said, her voice full of sorrow. To make him a thing? He is weak, Theron snarled. He is his mother's son. He will ruin the kingdom with his pity. Do it, or your coven burns. The witch looked at him with hatred. I will do as you ask. I will encase his heart in stone. But magic demands balance, you tyrant. I will place a failsafe. A key. What key? Theron demanded. The witch smiled, a sad, terrible smile. He will only be freed when his Akara finds him. His heart will break the stone, and hers will save the throne. The vision snapped. The light in the cave died, leaving us in the flickering firelight, breathless, our lips still only a breath apart. We stared at each other in total shock. The curse. It wasn't just a curse. It was a prophecy. His heart will break the stone, Corvin whispered, his hand on his chest. And hers will save the throne, I finished, my eyes wide. Before we could speak, before we could even process what we'd seen, a sound from outside the waterfall made my blood run cold. The crunch of a boot on gravel. Search the caves, a familiar voice shouted over the roar of the water. The king wants them found. Now. Corvin was on his feet in an instant, his sword in his hand. We both recognized the voice. It was Captain Julian. And he had found us. Chapter 6. It's a trap, I hissed, scrambling to my feet. He tracked us. He's cornered us. He's not alone, Corvin said, his eyes on the curtain of water. He wasn't panicked. The man who had been drowning in emotion was gone. In his place was a prince, sharp and focused. I hear at least 10 of them. They're spreading out. What do we do? I looked around the cave. There was no other exit. We were trapped. We fight, he said, his voice flat. We can't, I said, grabbing his arm. They're his royal guard. You can't just kill them. They will kill you, he countered, his eyes flashing. And they will drag me back to my father. I will not go back to that void. I would rather die here. My prince. Julian's voice was closer now, just outside the waterfall. I know you are in there. The king offers a truce. Corvin and I looked at each other. Liar, he mouthed. He will pardon the witch, your highness. Julian shouted. He will recognize the Acra bond. He just wants you to return. He wants to talk. He's trying to lure us out, I whispered. He's a terrible liar. I know, Corvin whispered back. He raised his voice. And what is his price for this pardon, Captain? There was a long pause. He asks that you return and formally abdicate the throne. He will give you lands in the south. You can live with her. In peace. Corvin laughed, a short, bitter sound. He's not even good at lying. If I abdicate, I am no longer a threat. He would have us both killed before we saw the sunset. He's right, I said. We can't fight them, and we can't surrender. So, what do we do? Corvin looked at me, at the fire, at the bubbling spring. We don't give them a choice. Corvin, what are you? Julian. Corvin shouted, walking toward the waterfall. A generous offer. But I have a counteroffer. My prince, don't be a fool. There are 10 of us. I know. Corvin called back. Send your men in. But know this. The moment they step through that water, he pointed at me, will bring this entire mountain down on top of us. She is stronger than you know, Captain. She will bury us all. Julian was silent. You're bluffing, I hissed at Corvin. I can't. I don't think I can do that. He doesn't know that, Corvin whispered. But he does know you're a witch. And he did see you stop an assassin and a falling child with a wave of your hand. He's afraid of you. Your Highness. Julian's voice was strained. Don't do this. Think of your kingdom. This is my kingdom. Corvin roared. This cave. This witch. This life. It's more than he ever gave me. Now leave. Or we all die here. Your choice, Julian. We waited. My heart was in my throat. I could hear the muffled, angry voices of the soldiers. They were arguing. Then, the sound of boots on gravel retreating. They're leaving? I whispered in disbelief. No, Corvin said, his eyes still locked on the waterfall. They're regrouping. They'll try to find another way in. Or they'll wait for us to starve. He turned to me, his face grim. He bought us time. That's all. Then we have to use it, I said, my mind racing. The vision. Hers will save the throne. We can't run. You're right. He'll just keep hunting us. We have to go back. He stared at me. Back? To the castle? They'll kill us before we reach the gates. Not if we don't use the gates. I looked at the bubbling spring. This is old magic. This is a sanctuary. These places, they're connected. To what? To other places of power, I said, remembering the old stories. The Warrens Julian mentioned. The old tunnels. And the castle. It was built on the oldest magical site in Mir 0R. There has to be a way. I walked to the spring. I knelt, plunging my hands into the clear, warm water. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I didn't hide from my magic. I commanded it. I let it fill me, the power of the Acra bond amplifying it. I reached out, not with my hands, but with my mind. I searched for an echo, another place of power. I found it. There, I gasped, opening my eyes. There's a path. A waterway. It's deep. But it's there. It leads right under the city. Right under the throne room. Corvin grabbed my hand, pulling me to my feet. How do we get there? We trust the magic, I said, my voice shaking. We trust the bond. I took his hand, and he didn't hesitate. We walked, hand in hand, into the center of the spring. The water deepened, rising to our waists, then our chests. I can't swim, he said, his voice tight. You won't have to, I said. Take a deep breath. And trust me. I pulled him under. The water was black, but the Acra marks on our wrists flared, lighting the way. It wasn't a tunnel. It was a current, and it pulled us, fast, through the darkness. It was terrifying and exhilarating. We burst up, gasping, into a small, dark cistern. We were in a chamber beneath the throne room. It's the old well, Corvin panted, pulling himself onto the stone ledge. They covered it a century ago. The prophecy, I said, climbing out, soaked and shivering. Hers will save the throne. It meant me. Aelindra, he said, grabbing my arms. My father is up there. With his entire court. This is suicide. No, I said, my eyes meeting his. The fear was gone. My magic was thrumming, a solid, powerful thing. It's destiny. I raised my hands. I placed them on the stone floor above our heads. I let my magic flow, not to break, but to listen. I could hear them. The scraping of chairs. Murmurs. And King Theron's voice. And when he is found, the king was saying, he will be unwell. The witch's magic will have consumed his mind. He will be unfit to rule. He's stripping me of my title, Corvin whispered, his face white with rage. He's telling them I'm insane. Then let's show them how sane you are, I said. I gathered every ounce of my power. I looked at Corvin. Get ready. I pushed. The stone floor of the throne room exploded upward. We rose from the rubble, standing in the center of the ancient well, surrounded by shocked, screaming nobles. Water and stone dust rained down. King Theron was on his throne, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated shock. Guards, he screamed, his voice cracking. Seize them. Kill them. The guards rushed forward, but Corvin was already moving. He wasn't a puppet. He wasn't a refugee. He was a king. He strode from the well, water streaming from his black leathers, the Akra mark on his wrist glowing like a star. For 10 years, his voice boomed, silencing the room, and Wairar has been ruled by a lie. He pointed at his father. You were ruled by him. He told you a witch cursed me. He lied. He paid that witch to make me silent. To make me an obedient puppet because he feared his own son. Lies. Theron shrieked, drawing his sword. Which spawned lies. She has enchanted him. Has she? I said, stepping from the well. My own mark was burning. I raised my hands. The court cowered. But I didn't attack. I let my magic flow out, but not as a weapon. As a truth. I projected the vision. All around the room, in the air itself, the nobles saw it. They saw a younger Theron. They heard him bargain. They heard the witch's prophecy. Hers will save the throne. The court was silent. They knew. King Theron's face crumpled. He was exposed. He was finished. With a primal scream of rage, he lunged. Not at Corvin. At me. You ruined everything. He was fast. But Corvin was faster. He stepped between us. He didn't draw his sword. He simply caught his father's sword wrist in his hand. The king struggled, but Corvin's grip was iron. He held his father, the man who had stolen his life. The throne room watched as the prince, his face full of a new, raw, painful emotion, pity, simply disarmed his king. It's over, father, Corvin said. The king sagged. The fight was gone. Captain Julian, who had entered the hall in the chaos, looked at Corvin, then at the defeated king. He understood. Guards, Julian said, his voice thick. Secure King Theron. He is unwell. They took him. They led the old, broken man away. Corvin turned to me in the center of the silent, stunned throne room. He was breathing heavily, his body thrumming with adrenaline. He was free. I was free. The law against magic was shattered. He walked toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. He stopped right in front of me. He was trembling. You saved me, he whispered. I raised my hand, placing it on his chest, over his mended heart. No, I whispered. We saved each other. Epilogue. 6 months later, I was standing on the high balcony of the tower. My tower. It was no longer a prison. It was our home. The golden hour light, that warm, honey-colored light of Wairar, streamed over the city. The kingdom was healing. After the king's retirement to a comfortable, well-guarded estate in the country, Corvin had been named Prince Regent. His first act was to abolish his father's laws. Magic was no longer a death sentence, it was a gift. Witches and healers were returning, drawn by the call of their new, feeling prince and his Acra. I heard a footstep behind me and smiled, not needing to turn. Arms, strong and warm, wrapped around my waist. Corvin rested his chin on my shoulder, pulling me back against his chest. He was no longer the dead prince or the raging, chaotic man. He was just Corvin. "You're doing it again," he murmured, his voice a low rumble against my back. "Doing what?" I asked, leaning into his embrace. Staring at the horizon. "You look like you're planning to run." I laughed, twisting in his arms to face him. "I'm not running. I'm watching. It's different." He smiled. His smile was still a new, breathtaking thing. It lit up his face, chasing the last of the shadows from his sea-blue eyes. "Good. Because I've tasked Julian with guarding every exit. You're not allowed to leave." "Oh? A prisoner again, am I?" I teased, looping my arms around his neck. "My prisoner," he confirmed, his smile fading into something softer, something that still made my heart skip. "Forever." He kissed me, and the magic still flared, but it was different now. It wasn't the chaotic explosion or the desperate jolt. It was a calm, steady warmth, a quiet hum that lived in both of us. The Acra bond. It was home. He pulled back, resting his forehead against mine. "It's still loud sometimes," he whispered, his voice serious. "The feeling. After so long in the quiet, it can be overwhelming." "I know," I said, tracing the Acra mark on his wrist. "But you're not drowning anymore." "No," he agreed, taking my hand and kissing my own mark. "I'm not. Because I have my anchor." He looked at me, his eyes full of a love so deep and profound it still astonished me. "I was cursed to feel nothing," he whispered against my lips. "And now you are all I feel." Thank you so much for coming on this journey with Aelindra and Corvin. I have to know, what part of the story did you find the most intriguing? Was it the moment in the throne room when the Acra bond first revealed itself? Or the tense escape through the dark tunnels? And what about that prophecy? His heart will break the stone, and hers will save the throne. Did you see that twist coming? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. My channel is still young and trying to grow, and every single subscription is a huge support from you and truly means the world to me. I can't wait to see you all in the next interesting story.